all of the guidelines regarding the red heifer, but truly, nobody knows. Now we know what it does. We know what it does. We know what you're supposed to do to get it to work for you. But why does Scripture says these two words? Nobody knows. Now I will read to you, let's say, references coming from sages, looking at the Proverbs. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. And we are talking about a limitation. We are talking about a limitation. This Ecclesiastics and King Solomon, Shlomo helps us, but we are talking about the heart, which represents the place of wisdom in Scripture. Not the brain. You will not see a brain in Scripture. You will see heart. So there are limitations to this kind of wisdom. I'm not only talking about the difference in the ability to collect and receive the abundance of knowledge through a difference between a stone heart and a heart which is not stone, which we will get to that immediately. But I'm talking about the fact that there is limitations. Let me read something about King Solomon, which wrote Ecclesiastics. God speaks to Shlomo and say, I will do what you have asked. He asked for wisdom. I will give you a wise and discerning heart. Not I will give you wisdom and discerning knowledge, but heart. And I told you, this parasha is about the heart. So that there will never have been anyone like you. We all know that in that essence, Shlomo HaMelech is regarded the wise of all people. But not even King Solomon or Shlomo were able to bring an answer to why does the red heifer has statues of Torah written on him. In Ecclesiastic he says, all this I tested by wisdom, saying, I resolved to be wise, but it was beyond me. What excites is out of reach and very deep. Who can fathom it? Interesting that Romans give us something quite interesting and almost similar, where it says, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of the Lord. How unsearchable his judgments and his path, beyond tracing out. Who has known the minds of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? So, the question regarding why the red heifer has that specific, let's say, I would call it prefix. The specific prefix, statues of Torah before it, is something that we right now don't know. Because if we did know, it would probably be something that will present itself. Right now, I haven't found any scholar in the Jewish library that can explain why it is. But what we do know, that the wisdom of the heart or our ability is limited somehow. And this is where our heart and our faith is tested, where we don't know everything and we don't understand completely everything, but we trust the Lord and do what he says. In that essence, Parashat Bechukotai is talking about those who will not follow his ordinance, will not follow his commandments, and will reject his statutes. So rejecting is the easiest thing to do. Why do I reject something? Because I don't understand it and I don't know it. If you will come with a proposal to me saying, hey, let's do A, B, C, D, and I don't understand what you're talking about and I don't know what you want me or what are all the circumstances, I will reject it. So the first thing we need to do is to accept the fact that even if we don't know everything, and even if we are not completely aware of what's going on, the Lord is always in control in our life. Even if we can see a week forward or 3 days forward, the Lord is amazing in what He has installed to us as individuals and as a part of His kingdom and the body of Yeshua. Now, Chukat represent the statues where we don't have enough information. We have other categories regarding which statues, I don't want to say it doesn't make sense because it sounds bad, but in Hebrew it says that we truly cannot understand them. Statues who are between one person to another, statues who are oriented through war, statues who are more commonly used nowadays as part of the civil law. Makes sense, but some statues are above and beyond, and this is where the Lord is telling us. And this is exactly where Bnei Israel started their journey by saying, we will do. And then they said it again, we will do, but at the third time, they said we will do and we will hear. So that's also something to consider, where their own heart, some kind of a prophesize, started with, we will do. And we will do it again. We do not need to hear any explanations. But at the third time, they said we will do and we will hear. So in Chukat, as we are Chukat Torah, or statues of the Torah, we don't have anything to hear. As the sages were thinking and looking into answers, why does these specific mitzvot, only this specific one has the prefix which encapsulate all of the Torah and bring it into a statue. And that is because we have a limitation and there are things that test our faith in the Lord, not asking for answers, not bargaining for deals, but being in peace with whatever the Lord has given us, trusting Him completely. So Chukat is actually about the heart, not about the mechanics. Of course, it is about the mechanics because we have this written for us, but you need to ask yourself why. And when you read scripture and you realize that the prefix is a bit off, you need to demand on that. So this would be the third level of reaching into scripture, not only reading in the surface, which is called pshat, not only looking at the words or the letters, getting all kinds of hints, but also demanding where it doesn't make, let's say, we don't have a full picture, or we don't have a natural understanding, or we don't have a, let's call it, intuitive flow with the ordinance. In that place, there is a drash, where we need to step on, let's say not step on, but step on the gas, okay? And make sure that we make an effort to understand. But there is some, let's say, distance for another part which we cannot practice, which is called the sod. Sod is those elements which the Lord kept to Himself under Scripture, which says, "Anistarot leHashem." All of those secrets are to the Lord, and for us, anything that He had revealed. But we do know that the heart needs to be cleansed, so for us to receive His Torah. Now, talking about that, we will move forward to the next subject of Miriam, or Miriam well. That, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but this is how the small parasha, which is parshia, like parasha is big, parshia is small one, that is the name they gave to the small parshia about Miriam's death and the fact that the water stopped. Isn't that interesting? Because in the same sentence, we read, now there was no water for the congregation. Before that, we read, in the first month, the whole congregation of Israel entered the wilderness of Zin, and stayed in Kadesh. There Miriam died and was buried. Now, there was no water for the congregation. Well, is there a connection, yes or no? I say yes. There is a connection. It's actually sitting there for you to understand it. Now, this is the different class about those three individuals who, by their, let's say, service to the Lord, the congregation received, let's call them gifts. One would be the water. Now, let's think about where we are in the timeline. Where we are right coming into the 40 years. This is actually before we go into the land. But let me ask you, was there another incident where there were no waters? Yes, there were. I think it's 2 books back, in Exodus. And just a few months after they exit Egypt, we have in Exodus 17, then the whole congregation of Israel left the desert of Sin, different. I actually have a slide about that. Can you find the slide with the map? Yeah, so you can see we have a Google map with the Sinai Island or the half island. And down in the bottom is actually Exodus 17. Now, nobody sent me the GPS. Moshe didn't send me the GPS, so this is archaeologist and historian figuring out the map. So down you can see Exodus 17, and up and to your right, you see those squares. That's actually Numbers 20. So in Numbers 20, Bnei Israel get very close to Israel after 40 years in the desert. They are just about to enter the land. Miriam died, and the water stops. Going back 40 years, they had the same problem with the water. So let's talk about the people. It's 40 years apart. Let's see if we can figure out the people. I'm reading Numbers 20. Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered against Moshe and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moshe and said, okay, let's go back to Exodus 17. Then Moshe cried out to the Lord, what should I do with these people? A little more and they will stone me. So, water get everybody thirsty. The effect of the people. Let's look at Numbers 20. And the Lord said to Moshe, take the staff and assemble the congregation. You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch, and I will pour out its water. You will bring out water from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their livestock. This is verse 7, and if you read Numbers 20, and you read from 7, you keep on reading, you'll get to number 13, verse number 13, and I hope you are reading this. These were the waters of the Meribah. You have that? Meribah. Okay, I want you to remember this, because we are looking at water, the fact that there were no water. We are looking at Numbers and then Exodus, and we are following the remez. We are following the word itself, a specific word, which is meriva. And you have it even in the English. They found it so unique that they put it there. So let's go ahead and read. That was Numbers. Let's go ahead and read Exodus. And the Lord said to Moshe, because we are asking what is the effect of the fact that the people were so tight. Walk on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take along in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. And when you strike the rock, water will come out of it for people to drink. So how come the Lord switched it up? Okay? Why did he switch it up? What's going on? Is it the same rock? So let's see what's going on with Moshe. Numbers 20. So Moshe took the staff from the Lord's presence because it was in the tent, just as he had been commanded. Then Moshe and Aaron gathered the assembly in the front of the rock. And Moshe said to them, listen now, you rebels, must we bring you waters out of the rock? Then Moshe raised his hand and struck the rock twice, not one but twice, with his staff, so that a great amount of water gushed out, and the congregation and their livestock were able to drink. These were the waters, this is verse 13, these in Numbers 20 were the waters of the Merivah. Again, let's follow that word. Let's look at Exodus 17, going back 40 years. So Moshe did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. Yeah, he got everybody together, and he struck the rock exactly like he was ordered. But then in verse 7, if you have verse 7 and you're looking at Exodus 17, he named the place Massah and Merivah. Am I right, or did I mix up the sentences? So Exodus 17, verse 7, he named the place Massah and Merivah. You should have this in your English. I have it in the Hebrew. And Numbers 20, these were the waters of the Merivah. So 40 years apart, we have water involved, and we have Merivah. So this is a nice hint. So we know that water are involved. The people were intense. Moshe had to communicate that to the Lord. In Exodus, he told him, hit the rock, but in Numbers, he told him, talk to the rock. Now we know that they are using the same word as Merivah, which is unique. Over there, it was called Massah and Merivah, and now it is called the water of the Merivah. But let's look at the result. Numbers 20:12. The Lord said to Moshe and Aaron, because you did not trusted me to show my holiness in the sight of Israel, you will not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. Because you did not trust me to show my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. That's Numbers. Let's see if we have more information in Scripture regarding this event. Let's look at Deuteronomy 32. In Deuteronomy 32, verse 51. For at the waters of Merivah in Kadesh, in the wilderness of Sin, both of you broke faith. So is it broke faith, or is it didn't trust with me among the Israelites by failing to treat me as holy in their presence? So Scripture is again reaffirming the situation and the result. In Deuteronomy 1, Moshe is discussing a topic. The sin of the spies. The Lord was also angry with me, Moshe is telling to the congregation. And he said, not even you shall enter the land. But is it because of the sin of the spies? No. But Moshe puts them together. So what is Moshe's sin? What did he do? What is its fault? We need to observe the water. We need to observe even the rock, because Scripture is using a different word between Exodus and Number. English will say rock, but the Hebrew will not say rock and rock. It's using a different word. So again, we need to follow those words. We need to go and learn through those words. I'm not sure if I have enough time for that. But let's look at Deuteronomy 33. So, like, we are almost there, going into the land, and now Moshe is blessing everybody. Concerning the Levites, give your Tumim to Levi and your Urim to your godly one. Okay, it's a bad translation. Who is the godly one? Well, it's not the godly one, but it's to the man of grace, which is Aaron. Through his grace, one of the gifts was Anan, was the cloud, whom you tasted at Massah, contested at the waters of Meribah. Again, we have this word. In the blessing with the Levites, where you have Massah, which is Exodus, and then you have Meribah, which is Numbers. Now, Deuteronomy 8:15, he led you through the vast and the dreadful wilderness, that thirsty and waterless land, okay, with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you waters out of hard rock. Which rock was it? The one from Numbers or the one from Exodus? Well, let's look at Psalm. I know I'm jumping, but I want us to follow several words. One was Meribah, which help us connect us between several verses. Now let's look at Psalm, see if we have a specific word that comes to mind. Psalm 106 says, at the water of Meribah, the people, angered the Lord, and trouble came to Moshe because of them, for they rebelled against him, his spirit, and Moshe spoke rashly with his lips. So what happened to Moshe? Why couldn't he speak? What Psalm 106 tells us? It tells us that the people that rebelled, as he's telling to them, you rebels, will we bring forth water from the rock? They made him so angry that he couldn't bring forward, let's say, the correct communication. Now, is it only Moshe, or is it something else? There were other attempts or other, let's say, hard situations between Bnei Israel and the Lord. I think almost 10 times. But Moshe didn't lose it? Is it something deeper? Do we have an option to look at something? We already know that water are involved both times. We have the word meriva, which helps us. And now I ask, what is meriva? What is actually the word meriva in Hebrew? So let's look at Proverbs 17, verse 14. We know that meriva has an appearance all along Scripture when it comes to the water, both in the Exodus event and in Numbers event. So water and meriva comes together. Let's try and explore this for a second. Proverbs 17 says, to start a quarrel is to first release the water. To start a quarrel is to first release the water. This is in English. I'm going to ask you, can you bet what quarrel is in Hebrew? Meriva. So in Hebrew it would be, to start a meriva is to first release the waters. Both incidents, Numbers and Exodus, there was a quarrel, a meriva. The one or the two incidents where the interaction between the people of Bnei Israel and Moshe was designed as meriva. Scripture is using a specific word. What does Genesis tell us about water? Because water are definitely involved. We can see that. Proverbs helps us, and let's look at Genesis for a second. Genesis 1, second day. Was it a good day? Was it a good day? The Lord said it's a good day? The Lord saw it was good and said it was good? We're sure? Okay. So on the third day, it was twice good. On the second day, you don't see good, actually. You go look it up. Okay, look it up. Say, it's a good saying in Hebrew. Say, third day, Yom Shlishi, twice good. So anything you get twice the blessing. It's interesting. Nobody knows why, okay? But we do know that Scripture is telling us that. But we read about the water. Now, quarrel and meriva are always leading to division. You know, people can communicate. Nowadays you call it, dynamics, bridging over gaps. But when you have a quarrel and you push aside, you have a division. What happened in the second day with water, which wasn't stated as a good day? Let there be a vault. Separate water from water. On the third day, gather the water, and God saw it was good, and God saw it was good. You can see that when you read, meaning that somehow Scripture is, let's say, leaping over the second day where God saw it was good. Of course, it was a good day. Everything is good when we talk about the Lord, but Scripture doesn't say what it says about the first day or the third day or the fourth day. The second day doesn't have, and God saw it was good. But the third days have it twice. So the water bring, as we can see, something with them. Now it makes sense. If I want to be a psychologist, I will say, hey, people will fight harder for water than for food. Because we mechanically will die from thirst much like earlier, before we die from we don't eat. Yeah, starvation. So it makes sense, but Scripture is taking us there. Now, what if I will tell you that there is even a hidden message inside? The rock, the water. Moshe is striking the water where he's supposed to speak. Sorry, striking the rock where he's supposed to talk to the rock. Now, I said that all of this preaching is about the heart. Now, did you ever heard about the heart of stone? Let's see if it can help us. Let's see if we have this. So the heart of stone is mentioned numerous times. And the Lord promised us that he will make that heart of stone into a heart of flesh. And abundance will flow. So if we will take that, we need to realize something. We need to realize that Moshe did something a bit off. There's no way around this. Because he didn't realize that these are not the same people. This is not the same generation. Their heart is different. 40 years with the Lord, with the Torah beside them. Their heart is a bit different. He didn't realize that, and this is why he couldn't lead that generation into the land. Something to suggest, for you to think about. Water, the rock. We have a lot of verses. I didn't have a lot of space in the PowerPoint, but we have a lot of verses connecting this heart, the stone, the tzur, another word in Hebrew for a rock, and the fact that the Torah is living water. When it flushes us, it cleanses us. And we talked about that. Unclean is tameh. And tameh is, when you change the letters, is actually sealed. So as we dwell in Scripture and we read Scripture, just by doing that, we are baptizing ourselves. We are cleansing ourselves. As we think more and more and we ask questions, we realize that everything leads back to us. The Lord loves us and he brought us Scripture so he may instruct us. The Torah is the instruction. The word itself is talking about teaching, is about instruction. And Yeshua said, if you love me, Yeshua is talking about discipling before he's talking about baptizing. There is so much value in approaching Scripture. So maybe Scripture is saying that the tzitzit is for you to remember everything. But we have Scripture. And we can actually read it whenever we want, especially today when you have this. Anytime. Somebody asks me something, what do you do if we get into a serious situation with the wife? I always tell her I'm going to read the Bible. She cannot say anything. That's it. Nothing. I'm not going out to the gym, nothing. I'm going to read the Bible, prepare for the preaching. Oh, it's amazing. Just imagine who will say something I'm reading the Bible now. So both the rock, the water, Moshe is somehow talking not only about what is on the surface, the fact that water was missing, the fact that the water was connected to Miriam who died and then the water stopped, but the fact that generation is changing. The generation that left Egypt had a hardening heart, meaning more sealed, had more husks. Husks, that's a word, husks, to make it stone-like. They came out of Egypt after they were exposed to idolatry. But then they got the Torah, they got the commandments, and then they walked through 40 years and the generation changed, their heart was cleansed. And they were more prone for speaking than hitting. I would say this at least. Scripture is telling us that cleaning our heart has processes from baptizing and tefillah. But it's also talking about Scripture itself, dwelling in the Torah. You know, how do you do tefillah? How do you baptize? You dwell, that's the same. You don't swim. You immerse yourself. So the word in Hebrew is exactly that. The word in Hebrew has that imagery. You immerse yourself in Scripture, reading it. This is a gift, amazing. Baruch Hashem brought us Scripture for us to be able to cleanse ourselves and to be more open to receive the abundance and the Kodesh. By doing what Moshe did, the Lord told him, you basically made me a bit secular, telling everybody that even after 40 years in the desert, still we need to use what we used 40 years ago. But it wasn't so. It wasn't so. Internally, now we need to think about that. These were the kids of those who were there. Okay, so their parents told them, yeah, when we exited Egypt, the Lord told Moshe to strike the rock and we got water. So they knew that. And as they were experiencing this, they saw it again. So 40 years were for nothing? No, they weren't. And this is something that Moshe was a bit off. And he didn't lead them or didn't lead them into Israel. And that's it.